Kendrick Perkins and Luka nearly flipped the entire All-Star weekend into a full-on pay-per-view boxing match. Believe me when I say the actual story behind the scenes is way more chaotic than those cleaned-up articles you are seeing online. According to insiders who were right there, Perk attempted to corner the Dallas star inside a hotel corridor, making things heated in a split second. Guys started yelling, the vibe got incredibly thick, and guards had to scramble over before the situation completely crossed the line of no return. The craziest thing about all of this? It absolutely did not just happen out of the blue. This beef has been simmering for months on end. The former big man has been taking jabs at the Slovenian guard for quite some time, calling out his physical conditioning and doubting his work ethic, going as far as claiming Cade Cunningham is actually the superior hooper. However, a lot of folks missed that Luka actually fired back, and his response dragged a few extra guys into the drama. At this point, we are not just looking at a minor argument. This thing has serious depth to it. If the fire keeps spreading, we might see a whole lot more than just a single feud come to light. You know that awkward feeling when you see a guy desperately trying to cling to the spotlight? That is exactly the energy fans are getting from Perkins in 2026. His entire broadcasting career relies on shouting crazy opinions, pushing narratives, and riding the wave of whatever is trending. Yet, the events that unfolded in Los Angeles during the midseason break went way past a hot sports take and straight into absolute madness. We are not talking about some standard court banter here. Sources are calling it a planned attack that nearly ended in a lawsuit. The midseason festival is traditionally the one weekend out of the year where the guys get to chill out, catch up, and just unwind. It is essentially a safe zone. However, rather than playing it chill, reports claim the former champion acted like a guy desperate to make a point, searching for his 15 minutes of fame. Bystanders mentioned he was loitering right outside the exclusive VIP lounge, designated strictly for current athletes and their camps, just standing around, keeping an eye out, and biding his time. The second Luka strolled by, things immediately escalated. The superstar, who typically smiles through the hate while effortlessly putting up 40 points and 15 dimes, was suddenly face-to-face with his biggest critic. The sports network talking head has spent years ripping into the Mavericks star over his weight and how he complains during games. Except on this specific night, he chose to bring that same energy in person. Right as the superstar was walking into the restricted area, the analyst supposedly blocked his way. There was zero greeting, absolutely no pleasantries, just pure hostility. Onlookers claimed the retired center immediately started teeing off, insulting the guard's physique and calling him out of shape right in the middle of the corridor. He demanded that the hooper stop the theatrical behavior. He basically told him to quit crying over every single foul call and to stop behaving like he is the center of the basketball universe. Put yourself in the shoes of the European phenom for a second. You are a worldwide icon, literally one of the best hoopers alive, and some former bench piece is stepping up to you while all your buddies are watching. Initially, the star just flashed that signature cold smile of his, shooting him a look of pure disrespect, giving off major "you are beneath me" energy. He actually attempted to simply walk right past the big man as if he were just a lamp in the hall, but the analyst refused to yield. He raised his voice, stood his ground, and continued jawing. Sources say it felt less like a genuine beef between two men and way more like a guy practicing his next television monologue. That is the exact moment the All-Star halted, spun back around, and completely snatched the analyst by the lapels of his suit. In a flash, the entire atmosphere got deadly serious. We are talking about two massive dudes with huge egos, literally nose to nose. For a brief moment, the whole area stood entirely still, with bystanders staring in shock and their cameras practically recording. The vibe in that corridor flipped from relaxed party mode to absolute hostility in less than 5 seconds. It escalated instantly. Bodyguards swarmed the pair before punches could be thrown, pulling the two giants apart before somebody did something they would regret. Then came the truly cringeworthy part. The minute the guards broke them up, the big man allegedly did a complete 180 with his demeanor. All that screaming and chest puffing evaporated, and he was suddenly scrolling on his cell phone as if it was just a regular Tuesday. That exact scene had everybody in the building rolling their eyes. However, this was not just some random flare-up of anger. The reason this whole thing blew up is because rather than leaving the beef in Los Angeles, the analyst immediately went on air to talk about it. During the February 20th, 2026 broadcast of the Road Trippin' podcast, he stared dead into the lens and stuck to his guns without a single ounce of hesitation. He went on to claim that the very next guy in line for greatness is Cade Cunningham. He outright stated that the young Pistons guard had completely jumped over the Dallas superstar in his personal top 5 rankings. Now, keeping it real here, the Detroit point guard is actually putting together an incredible year. Having the Motor City squad sitting at a 41-13 record is absolutely huge. The former #1 pick is executing highly intelligent, paced offense and locking guys down on defense. That is a fact. And sure, there are absolutely games where the Slovenian phenom's habits annoy the life out of his own supporters. You have the insanely slow ball movement, the endless isolation threes, and the constant whining to the officials while the opposing team gets a free fast break. Nobody is denying those issues. We have all watched him dribble the air out of the basketball until the very end of the clock, only to grenade a pass to a buddy who now has to force up a terrible shot. We have definitely witnessed him throwing visible temper tantrums whenever the whistle gets swallowed. And yeah, those internet memes about him crushing beers are hilarious simply because the dude is far from being shredded. But let us ask the million-dollar question here. Does any of that take away from his legendary resume? The analyst's entire point hinges on the Detroit star actually playing two-way basketball. He is pushing the narrative that getting stops and showing hustle are what actually count. But claiming Cade has already surpassed Luka right now? That just feels like skipping way ahead in the script. That is basically like calling a gifted rookie better than the veteran expert just because the expert takes some creative chances. Let us look at the actual track records here. Luka is a 5-time All-NBA first-team guy, a Western Conference Finals MVP, and a dude who casually drops 30-plus points a night in the postseason like it is just another day at the office. He has racked up multiple 40-point playoff performances when the stakes are highest, and his historic usage rates literally break the brains of the analytics crowd. We are not talking about hype here. That is hard, undeniable proof. On the flip side, Cade is still building his playoff legacy. Back in 2025, Detroit got bounced in a 2-4 series, with Cade shooting 42% from the floor and coughing the ball up more than 5 times a game. I am not hating on the guy. That is just the reality. There is zero doubt he is an upcoming superstar. The culture he is putting together out in Detroit is seriously impressive and definitely commands respect. However, pouring the concrete for a foundation is way different from living in the luxury suite. That is exactly why this entire drama feels so much deeper than just two dudes jawing at each other in some corridor. We are watching credibility, pure legacy, and massive egos crash into each other for the whole world to see. Plus, once things get personal, the fire does not just die down easily. This goes way beyond your standard daytime sports TV debates. This is about absolute pride on the line. So when Perk goes on air and puts Cade on the exact same level as SGA, Giannis, and Jokic, he is not just rambling. That was a totally calculated play designed to push Luka right out of that top-tier bracket, framing Detroit's overall record as the ultimate measure of individual greatness. Completely brushing off the fact that the Pistons are winning just as much because of their deep bench and solid coaching as they are from Cade taking that next step. Yet somehow, Luka, being a one-man wrecking crew, gets spun into a negative, like completely carrying a team's offense is a bad thing rather than an absolute superpower. And come on, we cannot play dumb about when this all went down. Perk unleashed that wild take on February 20th, right at the exact moment Luka was making his comeback from an injury, which was definitely no coincidence. That was a tactical strike. He fully understood all eyes were going to be on Luka anyway, so he poured straight gas on the fire just to steal the news cycle. He did not even stick to just comparing their box scores. He took it a step further, claiming Cade rocks that gritty Kobe Bryant work ethic while trying to frame Luka as nothing more than a showboat. Anybody with eyes could see he was laying a trap. So, the obvious question here is, why right now? Why is Perk working overtime to kick Luka out of the greatest in the league debate at this specific point in time? Well, if he actually believed he could just jump on a podcast, completely rewrite reality, and not catch any heat for it? He obviously forgot exactly who he was talking about. Picture getting confronted in a back hall by a guy doubting how hard you work, only for him to grab a microphone later and take shots at your entire legacy. That is a wild level of disrespect. But here is the crazy turning point. Whispers started coming out of the Lakers camp that Luka heard every single word of it. And he definitely was not laughing it off this time around. Sources claim Luka fired back saying, "Who is this unoriginal clout chaser trying to take shots at me? His own track record was totally average, so he has zero right to critique my game. He did not sugarcoat a single thing. He went straight for the jugular." Whether or not you are a fan of how he said it, you really cannot ignore how fed up he sounded. And Luka did not just throw an emotional tantrum either. He brought up the actual receipts. Because, let us be real, in the current landscape of basketball media, wild opinions spread way faster than the actual game stats. Pundits are well aware that drama gets views. If you drop a level-headed, rational take, nobody cares. But the second you doubt a top-tier player's mental toughness, the internet absolutely loses its mind. That is just how the game is played these days, prioritizing clicks over context and choosing to be loud rather than being accurate. Unless an opinion is completely over the top, it simply will not get traction. And Perk knows that exact formula better than anybody else in the business. Whenever he throws shade at Luka, the timeline goes completely crazy. Short clips get reposted everywhere, arguments go totally viral, and the engagement numbers shoot straight up. But this is exactly why looking at the receipts is so important. Luka Dončić took home the EuroLeague MVP trophy when he was just 18 years old. Back when most kids are just trying to figure out the college game, he was absolutely schooling grown men internationally. Then he grabs NBA Rookie of the Year, racks up several All-NBA first-team nods, and puts up postseason numbers chilling. Right around 30 points, 9 boards, and 8 dimes a night. We are talking 60-point triple-doubles, totally historic usage rates, and dropping 40 bombs in the playoffs like it is light work. That right there is consistent, pure dominance. He is way more than just a mixtape reel. He is an entire offensive system that completely breaks opposing defenses on a nightly basis. Coaching staffs literally drop their whole game plan just trying to put the brakes on him. That is what true, elite, on-court gravity actually looks like. Now, let us look at the other side. Kendrick Perkins put together a decent run in the league. He did his job, and he picked up a ring as a solid role player, but he was never the main guy. He was never an all-star, never sniffed an MVP ballot, and definitely never made a first-team roster. What he brought to the table was muscle and a tough attitude, not the ability to carry an entire franchise on his back or act as the offensive hub. I am not throwing shade, just providing the real context here. So when Luka fires back and shuts down the hate, he is standing on a mountain of real achievements. He is just existing in a completely different tier of basketball. Sure, Cade is on his way up. There is absolutely no denying he is cooking up something great out in Detroit. But there is a massive leap between having high upside and having the actual receipts. Between pure potential and dominating at the highest possible level. That is exactly why the tension is so high right now. We are way past just looking at the box score. This boils down to pure legacy. It is a battle over who actually deserves to be called an all-time great. Whenever Perk slides Cade up there alongside guys like SGA, Giannis, and Jokic, but quietly pushes Luka out of the mix, he is not just arguing sports. He is straight up trying to rewrite the script. Luka definitely picked up on that vibe, but rather than flashing that classic smile and laughing it off like he used to, he fired right back with some serious bite. The 2026 edition of Luka is completely done being the laid-back kid. He catches all the disrespect, he reads the hidden agendas, and he is finally clapping back. We are not just dealing with talking heads stirring up drama here. This involves massive egos and personal brands on the line. Whenever someone attacks your name on national television, the response is going to get incredibly loud, incredibly fast. The craziest thing is watching a guy clock in every single day, rocking a custom suit, just to tear down a dude who is literally redefining how basketball is played. Perk has the nerve to tell Luka to stop acting up, even though his whole broadcasting run has essentially been one giant reality show. From the screaming matches to the forced silences and clickbait quotes, the guy is basically serving up pure showbiz and calling it sports journalism. You have to laugh at the hypocrisy of him roasting a generational talent, considering you would struggle to find a highlight reel of his own playing days. People constantly clown him online, saying stuff like, "Come on, Perk, why are you doing him like that?" while completely cracking up over his hilarious lowlight reels. Honestly, basketball Twitter still shares that one viral video of him tripping over his own feet and blowing a wide-open layup way more than they talk about anything positive he actually did on the court. On the flip side, Luka is out there casually dropping stats that have people comparing him to absolute icons like MJ and Kobe. That massive gap in talent pretty much speaks for itself. Hearing speeches about what it takes to win from a guy who was basically just a background piece on good rosters is definitely a tough pill to swallow. Back in Oklahoma City, the advanced stats usually proved the squad actually played smoother when they went small and sped up the pace. During the 2012 championship series, the Miami Heat relentlessly picked apart those exact defensive weaknesses. Fast forward to Cleveland in 2015, and his minutes were basically non-existent while LeBron single-handedly dragged that franchise. That is not throwing shade. It is just what actually happened. Right now, there are whispers all around the NBA, wondering when these hot takes cross the line from breaking down the sport to just straight-up attacking someone's character. Diving into game footage is completely different from getting into a face-to-face shouting match in the back tunnels over the way somebody looks. Breaking down tactics is totally fair game, but the second you attack a guy personally, the situation instantly goes nuclear. But the landscape has completely shifted in 2026. Today's hoopers are not shaking in their boots over guys in suits behind a desk. They hold all the power with their own social media platforms, and they will absolutely respond the second you say something crazy. The classic setup where media members trash a guy while the athlete takes the high road is officially dead. We are not just talking about one single viral soundbite either. This is far from the first time Perk has thrown dirt on Luka's name. For the past couple of seasons, he has basically been launching a non-stop barrage of disrespect at the exact same dude. If you look at the receipts, the agenda becomes blatantly obvious. None of this feels like objective broadcasting. It feels like a vendetta. Just look back at what went down last May. Los Angeles gets bounced from the postseason, leaving huge question marks about their depth chart and their head coach. But rather than talking about any of that, Perk hits the mic and somehow puts Luka below a bunch of guys that made absolutely zero sense. He went on record claiming Luka Dončić is the biggest defensive liability out of any superstar in recent NBA history. Full stop. He was actually trying to argue that Luka was a bigger liability than some of those washed-up 2015 veterans. Or even worse than rookies who have never even sniffed a deep postseason run. The entire basketball world paused when he dropped that one. You could even see the other people on the panel completely stunned by the sheer audacity of it. He ignored all the actual facts. He completely glossed over Luka fighting through spine injuries, ignored how he carried the entire offense, and pretended like opposing teams were not dedicating their whole game plan to double-teaming him. That ridiculous quote naturally went viral everywhere, so his job was basically done. Next up came the whole weight debate. Right before Luka arrived at the 2025 training camp looking incredibly shredded, Perk wasted years relentlessly pushing this idea that he was fat, making cheap jokes about his drinking habits, and obsessing over the dude's physique nonstop. He would sit there claiming Luka was totally out of shape, trying to play it off like he was just giving out tough love. He essentially told fans they could cry about it all they wanted, but he was going to drop some hard truths. And his big truth was claiming Luka was just an absolute turnstile on defense. He claimed that ever since Luka threw on that purple and gold Los Angeles jersey, no other player in the entire association had been blown past more often. The funniest part about all this fitness talk is that it is coming from a retired big man whose entire reputation was built on just being massive rather than actually being athletic. Then there is his absolute favorite topic, trying to act like a body language expert. He would spend countless blocks of television hyper-analyzing how Luka complained to the officials, scrutinizing his face every time a whistle was blown late, and demanding he step up as a captain. Preaching about captaincy definitely makes for good television, but being a true general is really about coming through in the clutch during the postseason, hitting the hardest shots, and having your squad pass you the rock when the season is on the line. Luka's track record when the clock is ticking down is completely undeniable. But the craziest dynamic right now is watching how other television hosts are dealing with this. If you pay attention, you will catch his coworkers rolling their eyes, frantically trying to pivot to another subject, and laughing awkwardly whenever he takes things way too far. It is incredibly obvious that the rest of the crew realizes when he is pushing a narrative that makes absolutely zero sense. If you really look at the guys he goes after, they usually have a lot in common. He is always attacking foreign-born superstars who dominate the ball and shatter all the old-school stereotypes about who runs the NBA. The second you catch on to his playbook, you cannot unsee the bias, especially noticing how unhinged he got the minute Luka touched down in LA. You really can't brush it off. Ever since he suited up in the purple and gold, the noise just went to a whole different level. The hot takes became way more vicious. We aren't talking about offensive sets or defensive schemes anymore. They're attacking his makeup and mentality. It honestly stopped feeling like regular sports analysis a while ago. It comes across as super defensive of their turf. Which leads us to a pretty awkward conversation. Are we actually just evaluating hoops right now? Or is there a serious level of gatekeeping going on behind the scenes? Anytime a fresh face takes over a legendary organization that is still deeply connected to the LeBron years, the media narratives get super touchy. People want to guard those legacies. And throwing out comparisons just naturally riles everyone up. Look, nobody is claiming players shouldn't be critiqued. Arguing about performance is literally why we watch the game. However, once those breakdowns turn into direct character assassinations and behind-the-scenes beefs, we've completely left the basketball court. And it is glaringly obvious that Luka is absolutely done just grinning and bearing it. This whole drama goes way beyond box scores. It is entirely about hierarchy and controlling who actually gets to dictate what a legend looks like in today's league. At this exact moment, that tug of war is completely deafening. And honestly, it is the blatant double standards that will truly leave you speechless. You will literally watch Perk jump on national television and waste 20 solid minutes claiming Luka cries to the refs way too often, saying he is out there hunting for foul calls rather than hustling back on defense. Yet, practically in the exact same sentence, he will turn around and crown Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as this absolute purist of the sport. Have we somehow lost internet access in 2026? Let us just check the actual stats. Shai is sitting right at roughly 12 trips to the charity stripe every single night. Meanwhile, Luka is breathing right down his neck with roughly 11. Tell me how one dude gets labeled as an unguardable mastermind while the second guy is somehow accused of cheating the game? The statistics are crystal clear. If living at the foul line is considered high IQ hoops for one franchise guy, you cannot magically flip the script and call it a moral failing for somebody else. That is exactly why fans are really starting to side-eye this whole agenda, mainly because it feels like a deliberate attempt to shape public opinion rather than an honest look at the analytics. And just to stop anyone from spinning my words right here, yeah, we all know Shai hails from Canada. He might not have grown up stateside, but both the way he plays and his overall vibe perfectly match exactly what the American sports media complex loves to hype up. On the flip side, Luka took the European route to get here, and his entire brand completely disrupts that traditional media comfort bubble. Seriously, just go replay Perk's latest podcast tour where he went on a whole rant about stateside hoopers losing their roster spots to guys coming over from Europe. He literally claimed there are hungry young dudes overseas who are fully prepared to cross the water and snatch away these guys' lunch money. He even added that parents shouldn't be putting their kids in that spot. He was absolutely not holding back with that delivery. It rang out like a massive red alert, which is right around the time everybody really started getting suspicious. Simply put, the second you stop breaking down a player's jumper and start focusing on what country is printed on their passport, you have officially quit doing your job as an analyst. At that point, it is just straight up prejudice making an appearance. Plus, we aren't talking about some isolated incident here. This behavior has a long, documented history. Think back to when Jokic was making his MVP push, and Perk heavily suggested that voters were leaning on completely unrelated outside factors rather than actual on-court dominance. Or look at how he has constantly picked apart other overseas talents using arguments that feel way more like personal vendettas than actual tactical breakdowns. The targets rotate, but the playbook is always exactly the same. You have this lingering, outdated mindset in the culture where if a player didn't spend their summers sweating it out on the American AAU circuit or playing for the right high schools, their talent somehow gets a massive asterisk next to it. The reality check is that the NBA is a completely international powerhouse today. World-class ability isn't confined to a single geographic area anymore. Superstars like Luka, Jokic, and Giannis completely bypass that standard American roadmap. And quite frankly, that massive evolution leaves certain old head media members feeling super threatened. The guys actually lacing up the sneakers are clocking this behavior as well. It is way bigger than just some noise on NBA Twitter. Throughout the past few seasons, several athletes have thrown out clues that Perk is absolutely not a guy you confide in off camera. You don't just magically earn a shady reputation like that for zero reason. Let us rewind to the summer of 2025. Right when Luka touched down in Los Angeles, looking absolutely shredded and laser-focused. The second those gym pics went viral online, Perk was literally the loudest guy in the room cheering him on. He hopped right onto ESPN's NBA Today, hyping up Luka's dedication, talking about how dialed in he looked, and even boldly crowning him as a massive frontrunner for the 2026 MVP award. The vibes were absolutely immaculate. Everyone was basically saying that an energized, conditioned Luka meant the rest of the association was completely cooked. Reason number one being that it instantly cements the Lakers as a legitimate championship threat. And reason number two was that Perk personally viewed Luka as his early lock to bring home the MVP hardware. But the second December rolled around, LA's defense completely fell off a cliff, complete with some seriously chaotic rotation adjustments. The locker room chemistry seemed completely out of sync, and practically overnight, Perk totally changed his tune. He didn't just point out flaws in their defensive game plan either. He put the crosshairs squarely right back on Luka. He made fun of his hustle, tore apart his abilities as a captain, and threw out a punchline about how the Lakers couldn't even guard a parked car right now. The entire storyline was flipped on its head in a matter of hours. That specific pivot is exactly what feels incredibly calculated. As long as jumping on the hype train gets him clicks, he's the ultimate hype man. The moment tearing somebody down becomes the hotter topic, he instantly switches sides. Having any sort of reliable, consistent sports take clearly isn't on his agenda. If you actually need the hard evidence, just dial it back to the tail end of 2022 when Serge Ibaka openly put Perk on absolute blast. Perk had previously gone out of his way to suggest Ibaka faked his birth year back when they shared a locker room in OKC. Going as far as to quote that Serge claimed to be 18, while throwing in a highly offensive jab about Africans lying about their age, naturally, making a claim like that ignited an absolute firestorm of controversy. Ibaka clapped back instantly, torching him for violating the sacred brotherhood of the locker room and constantly gossiping about his own guys. He explicitly dropped a bomb that Perk used to secretly trash Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook behind closed doors, only to play the ultimate hype man whenever the cameras were rolling. Really let that sink in for a second. At the professional level, that inner circle code is everything. Having your teammates' backs is non-negotiable. The second your former brothers start putting your character on trial, that label stays glued to you forever. Therefore, when fans watch Perk launch these tirades against Luka today, they aren't just watching a sports debate. They are looking directly at a track record. They recognize a highly established habit of singling guys out, shoving an agenda down the timeline's throat, and then jumping ship the very second the internet winds shift directions. Ultimately, this entire situation gives us a much clearer picture of modern sports media than it does of Luka. Controversial opinions bring in the cash, and anger goes viral, while level-headed basketball talk gets buried. In an environment like that, Whoever yells the loudest usually grabs the most attention. Meanwhile, Luka just keeps dropping numbers that belong in the history books. He is still commanding constant double teams and putting together postseason performances that other guys could only wish for. The guy does not need to get behind a mic to prove his worth, because what he does on the hardwood speaks for itself every single night. So, whenever Perk pops up on your television trying to analyze a player's posture or grit, keep his actual track record in mind. Keep in mind just how fast the media script can change, and never forget that the guys on the court are absolutely paying attention to all this talk. If you enjoyed diving into this topic with me, go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe to the page, and send this video to a friend who needs the real context. Sound off down in the comments below. Do you think we are seeing genuine sports critique here, or is it just calculated drama? Let me know what your take is. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I will see you guys in the next video.